The courtroom was silent. Not the kind of silence that feels calm, but the heavy kind where every breath, every shuffle of paper feels too loud. People sat in the gallery, leaning forward, waiting for the next word. The judge sat high on the bench, glasses low on his nose, his gavel resting like a weapon in his hand. And at the center of it all was her. She was no ordinary defendant. Her posture was too straight, her presence too steady. She wore the weight of experience in the way she sat, calm, unshaken, almost cold. A Navy SEAL. Years of discipline had shaped her into steel, but the one thing that softened her image sat at her side. A dog. Not just a pet, but a partner. Trained, loyal, watching every move in the room with sharp eyes. People whispered about why the dog was allowed inside. Some thought it was for comfort, a service animal for emotional support. Others suspected more, because when you looked at the dog, you knew it wasn't just there to calm nerves. It was alert, controlled, almost military in the way it scanned its surroundings. The hearing dragged on. Lawyers spoke, accusations flew, voices rose. But through all of it, the woman hardly moved. She didn't flinch, didn't react, didn't give the room the satisfaction of emotion. Only her dog shifted, ears twitching, head tilting whenever a certain person on the stand spoke. Subtle, but noticeable to anyone paying attention. And then it happened. She leaned down just slightly, close enough that her lips brushed the air near her dog's ear. A single word left her mouth so soft that no one else in the courtroom could hear. It wasn't for them, it was for him. Her partner. Her soldier on 4 legs. The reaction was instant. The dog froze, eyes locked forward, body stiff as stone. Its training kicked in and the air in the courtroom changed. People noticed. The witness stumbled mid-sentence, looking nervously toward the animal. The room grew restless, unsure of what had just shifted. All eyes went to the judge. Surely he would dismiss it. A dog in a courtroom was unusual enough, but a whispered command. Most thought he would scold her, maybe even order the dog removed. Instead, he leaned forward, eyes narrowing, studying both woman and animal as though he understood more than he let on. The silence stretched long. The witness fidgeted. The dog remained locked, unblinking. The woman sat straight again, her expression unreadable. And then the judge did something no one expected. He lifted his hand, halted the testimony, and broke the tension with 4 words. "We're stopping right here." Gasps rippled across the courtroom. The lawyers froze. No one knew what had just happened, or why. But one thing was clear. A whisper had changed everything. She wasn't born into the spotlight. To the world, she looked simple. Plain clothes when she wasn't in uniform. Soft-spoken, no need for attention. But beneath that quiet surface was a story of steel. She was a Navy SEAL, one of the toughest warriors on Earth. Trained to survive storms most people couldn't even imagine. Years of discipline had carved her into someone who didn't just endure pressure. She thrived in it. And when she walked into that courtroom, she carried all of that training with her. But she didn't walk in alone. At her side padded the one companion who had seen her at her best and her worst. A dog, built not just for loyalty but for service. Some called him a K9, others a service animal, but for her, he was more than a label. He was her partner, her anchor. Together, they had faced dangers overseas, missions no one could speak about in detail, situations where one mistake could cost lives. When she returned home, the bond didn't break. It only grew stronger. That bond is why the court had made an exception. Normally, animals aren't welcome in such a setting, but this wasn't a normal case. She had argued, quietly, firmly, that the dog wasn't just support, he was evidence of her truth. He had been trained to recognize signs, to react when something was wrong. Some thought it was unnecessary, even dramatic. Others believed it was her right. The judge allowed it, though not without hesitation. The case itself was layered with tension. The woman had come to defend herself, her reputation, her service. The opposition painted her as reckless, someone hiding behind her uniform to cover mistakes. They brought witnesses who spoke with confidence, voices strong and polished. But confidence doesn't always equal truth, and that's where her dog mattered most. He wasn't there to bark or attack. He wasn't there to intimidate. He was there to observe, to listen in the only way animals can, without bias, without politics, without fear. His training allowed him to detect shifts in tone, body language, even the smallest hint of dishonesty. Where people saw polished words, he sensed something deeper. To understand why the courtroom buzzed with curiosity, you need to imagine what it meant for a Navy SEAL to bring a dog like this into such a setting. It wasn't about sympathy. It wasn't about pity. It was about trust. In battle, she had trusted this dog with her life. And now, in the fight for her own truth, she trusted him again. Every move in that room mattered. Every glance, every twitch of the dog's ear was a signal, quiet but powerful. And as the witness continued to speak, ignoring the animal at her feet, the seal woman stayed calm. But inside, she was waiting, watching, because she knew one whispered word could turn the entire case on its head. And when the time came, she was ready. The tension in the room thickened with every passing second. The lawyers fired questions and answers back and forth, their voices clashing like swords. The witness on the stand spoke with practiced certainty, painting the seal woman as someone reckless, someone undeserving of trust. Some in the gallery nodded along, convinced by the steady tone and polished words. But down at her side, the dog stirred. It wasn't obvious at first. A shift in posture, ears twitching, the faintest growl low in the throat, too soft for most to notice. But she noticed. She always did. Years of missions had taught her to trust the signals, no matter how small. The dog was telling her something. What was being said didn't add up. Her eyes stayed fixed forward, expression calm, but her hand moved slightly, resting on the dog's back. The animal tensed under her touch. And then, in a moment so subtle it was almost invisible, she leaned down and whispered. One word, just one. The dog's transformation was immediate. Its body stiffened, gaze locked on the witness. No barking, no lunging, just focus. Absolute, unshakable focus. The witness faltered mid-sentence, voice cracking as eyes darted toward the animal. The polished mask slipped for a heartbeat, and in that heartbeat, the courtroom shifted. Murmurs spread through the gallery. The attorneys stopped, caught off guard by the sudden change in atmosphere. Even the court reporter looked up from the keys, sensing something unusual was unfolding. And then all eyes turned to the bench, to the judge. Everyone expected irritation, a warning, maybe even the order to remove the dog from the courtroom. Instead, the judge leaned forward, studying the scene with a piercing gaze. His eyes flicked between the woman, the dog, and the trembling witness. It was as if he understood the unspoken language being played out before him. Silence stretched across the room. The witness shifted in the chair, hands clasping nervously. The dog didn't blink. The seal woman sat straight again, face unreadable, but her calm spoke volumes. Finally, the judge lifted his hand. He cut through the tension with a voice that was firm, commanding, impossible to ignore. "Stop!" The lawyers froze. The witness's mouth snapped shut, and then came the twist no one expected. The judge looked directly at the woman's dog, then back at the witness and said, "We are halting this testimony. Something here isn't right." Gasps filled the air. The gavel hadn't come down, but the blow was just as powerful. A single whisper to a dog had unraveled the certainty of the courtroom. And in that moment, justice seemed to take on a new shape, one no one in that room would ever forget. The judge's words rippled through the courtroom like a shockwave. For a long moment, no one moved. The lawyers stared at each other, unsure what to do next. The gallery whispered in disbelief. The witness on the stand sat frozen, the weight of the dog's unblinking stare still pressing against their confidence. What had begun as a routine hearing had turned into something no one could have scripted. The judge leaned back, voice steady but sharp. He ordered the testimony suspended, demanded further review, and instructed both sides to prepare for a deeper investigation. It wasn't just about procedure anymore. It was about truth. And everyone in that room knew they had just witnessed something extraordinary, something that would not stay contained within those four walls. News spread quickly. A courtroom clerk whispered about it in the hallway. Someone in the gallery posted online within minutes. By the end of the day, clips and descriptions were racing across social media. The seal woman and her dog. The whisper that froze the court. The judge who listened to silence. The story went viral. Because it wasn't just unusual, it was cinematic. It carried the weight of justice, loyalty, and mystery all in one unforgettable moment. People debated what it meant. Some praised the woman for her courage and her trust in her partner. They called it proof that discipline, loyalty, and training could reveal truths no cross-examination could touch. Others questioned it. Should a dog have that kind of influence in a courtroom? Should a whisper be able to shift the course of justice? Arguments raged online, but one thing was undeniable. The moment had struck a nerve. For the seal woman, it wasn't about going viral. It was about survival. Just as on missions overseas, she had trusted her partner without hesitation. In battle, that trust had saved lives. In court, it had saved her truth. The judge's decision showed that even within the rigid walls of law, there was room for instinct, for recognition of something deeper than polished words. And for the public watching from their screens, it became a symbol, a reminder that justice isn't always loud. It doesn't always come with raised voices or slammed gavels. Sometimes it comes in a pause, in silence, in a whispered word that carries more weight than an entire argument. That's why the story refused to fade. It wasn't just a courtroom drama. It was a reminder that truth can be fragile, but when paired with loyalty, it becomes unbreakable. The seal woman didn't raise her voice. She didn't make a scene. She whispered. Her dog listened. And a judge, against all expectation, did too.